Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy the Notorious Mix back again with another video, and today I've got something in mind, a little bit of an idea, because as you know, probably through watching some of my previous videos on this channel, I'm a little bit of a wrestling fan. I like to do a bit of fantasy booking, engaging with the content and stuff like that, and well, I've had a bit of a WWE related idea. Now, to give you the background, for the past 520 or 30 something days, Roman Reigns has been the Universal Champion. Now, he's been a fantastic heel, the top heel in the company, probably the top star in the industry. Each storyline I feel has some really good beats to it. He's had some really good matches, but I think there is a problem with that title run, and this is what it is. There's no babyface or no contender in general. Don't even worry about babyface or heel here. Nobody on the roster who's fought him that really has felt like they're going to win. Because the rest of the main roster people just don't seem like the kind of caliber that are like, yeah, they could beat Roman Reigns. For Roman Reigns, you know, let's just equate him to, say, the big star of the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's no The Rock. You know what I mean? You have names you could argue, and I think that if you book a lot of people right, you could. If I think Drew McIntyre was, you know what I mean? Maybe tone down the cringy part of the Braveheart stuff and just go back to Scottish Terminator and give him a little bit of a push, he could do it. I think that Seth Rollins is a great antagonist to Roman Reigns, that kind of Joker to his Batman kind of thing. And I think he probably could have dethroned Reigns. But even then, I don't think that pushes him off the top. Because if you're going to do it at Rumble, then Reigns will beat Lesnar. He'll win the other belt and he'll be back on top for, you know. So I don't really... And outside of that, outside of who did I suggest? I suggested Seth Rollins, really. Who else has really felt like they could beat Reigns? Because nobody else has had that kind of star power to do it. And everybody else who has, you know, really felt like a star in a Reigns feud has been a part-timer, has been Edge, has been Brock Lesnar, has been John Cena. You know, nobody that's like, okay, they're here week to week and there's a reason we can justify them winning the title from Reigns that elevates them or makes sense or would be of service to a longer term continuation of the WWE narrative. If we contrast this to the mega heel reign in AEW, that was Kenny Omega with Don Callis as his guy, there was someone who they had invested time in building their character, them having a relationship or some kind of reason why they would be the foil to Omega, and a reason why they'd be the one to go over and beat him with Hangman Page, with his character building over 2-3 years, with his ties to Kenny Omega, and he went over in a brilliant way. He was the over babyface. There was an end to the story which was logical or worked, right? Now, here's what I want to do. I'm going to find a guy in WWE, which I think that if you book a lot of people right, they could do it, that you get to them fighting, you build them, you get to them fighting Roman Reigns, they dethrone Reigns, and it makes sense, and they can carry on for a while as a babyface, and they have that credibility to do that. Now, there's a name that's been thrown around, guy in NXT, and I reckon there's a 141 and 2/3% chance you know who I'm talking about. Yes, I made a Steiner math reference, and speaking of Steiner, let's look at Big Papa Pump's nephew, Rick Steiner's son, Bron Breakker. For the love of God, please change that name, WWE. Call him just Rex Steiner, Bron Steiner. It's not hard. You know, it's 2022, not 1982. You can come up with a better name, I think. Anyway, apart from the name, I think everything else about Bron Breakker is absolutely terrific. He's got a really good, just effective, efficient promo in him. He carries himself well in the ring. He can be a good powerhouse. He can mix it up with people. He's charismatic. Comes off like a baby face that's tough. He's not like, you know, you need to do some underdog story with him. He feels like a guy who could credibly beat a lot of people. Now, we picked Bron Breakker. How do we get him to the point of beating Roman Reigns. The way I'm going to do it, the start, is we need to justify him as the NXT champion, losing that title without losing momentum, coming up to the main roster and beating Reigns. And although you could take more time to do this, I kind of want to do it a little bit quickly. I'm going to try to Brock Lesnar him to the Universal title, basically. But we need to do it in a way that gives him credibility going into the Reigns fight. Now, this is going to be kind of tough to do because there's contract situations which don't exactly align, plus a lot of fundamental changes to how NXT works and the NXT title works to do this. But I think the changes that in the long term are worthwhile and they serve this story. Now, what needs to be done is that whoever can act as an authority figure or someone to represent NXT and be in charge. It's not William Regal because he's not the GM anymore. So let's go with their actual head of creative and someone who can be an on-air personality. Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels comes out, and we need to do this rather soon. Maybe after, I don't know, after Vengeance, something. It's got to be soon. He comes out and he speaks about NXT being the gateway for the future of the WWE, to make their name, to grow as performers, and to be ready to go to the main roster and be the future of this company. And you can point out examples of people doing that. You've got Rollins, Reigns, Owens, Finn Balor. You've got Damian Priest who's kicking. You know, you name some of the call-ups that have gone well. Maybe not so much people like, you know, Karrion Kross, who they won't name because he was released. Or you get what I'm saying. Anyway, because now we know what NXT is, we know what its vision is. HBK and Vince have thought about this and they want to help make NXT better at doing that. They want to facilitate this transition. And how they're going to do it is, yes, Impact fans, I'm kind of robbing from the concept of the X Division title here. And if people have clicked what I mean, what I want to do is that at Mania, which is a WrestleMania, is a really long pay-per-view. A really long event which goes over 2 nights. So we need content to fill it. And instead of coming up with crap that has no reason for being on there and is built by a couple of 2-minute matches and the worst backstage segments you've ever seen, let's make one of the matches on 2-night WrestleMania an NXT Championship match. And whoever wins that NXT Championship match is obviously the champion. And on the following episode of NXT has a choice. They either hold on to the NXT title or they relinquish the NXT title in exchange for a shot at either the WWE or the Universal title at the next main roster pay-per-view, which would be, I'm guessing, WrestleMania Backlash. Now, I think this is a great way to, post-Mania, getting the company going with like a fresh kind of story or feud, should the NXT champion choose to go for that. And it gives the fallout of WrestleMania like something to look forward to. What's the NXT champion going to choose? What it also does is give a storyline reason for the NXT champion to be called up in a way where they don't actually have to lose a match to lose their title. And because of what can happen through the NXT Championship, people like a Dolph Ziggler going down from the main roster to NXT makes sense. There's a reason why he'd want to go and win the NXT title. Now, with that being said, we've established the rules. We've established that Braun Breaker is going to dethrone Reigns, and we've established how we're going to make this possible through the mechanics of the NXT title. Now we actually need to do it and come up with the right feuds to do it. And I'm going to address where there's certain pitfalls and things what wouldn't be able to happen or need to be changed to happen. But anyway, we're going into Vengeance. We've got the feud of Breaker versus Escobar. You've also got Ziggler who wants a shot at Breaker. And we also set up a bit of beef with Ciampa and Ziggler through the contract signing segment. Now, let's take that into Vengeance. We have the NXT title match. Breaker, Escobar. Breaker wins. Done with Phantasma. Also, #1 contender shot for the NXT title at the next takeover prior to Mania. Either it will be the day before Mania if Chamber is the last pay-per-view before WrestleMania, or it'll be a month before Mania if we're doing something in line with Fastlane. Either way, we can make this work. Like I said, Breakker beats Escobar. He continues as a champ. Next feud, Ziggler beats Ciampa to become the #1 contender to Breakker's title. And now, the reason I want to do this, because look, one, Ciampa's had his shots at the title already, and like he was the champ, Breakker dethroned him, they had their whole feud. We've already seen that. Also, let's pay off the Ziggler and Ciampa bickering, and let's get Ziggler to the title shot by having him do more than, "Hey Bron Breakker, how you going? I sent you a couple of mean tweets. Can I have a title shot, please? And Bron Breakker going, "Why certainly, Dolph." Let's actually make Ziggler earn the shot somehow. Fair enough, we've done that. So now you go into Ziggler versus Breakker at the next pay-per-view. Breakker beats Ziggler, which means Breakker is the NXT champ going into Mania. And not only that, he's done really well to beat Ciampa, the heart and soul of NXT. He's had a good feud with Escobar, and Legado de Fantasma comes off strong, and he's beat a main roster guy, Dolph Ziggler. He's had a pretty strong, it's a short reign, but it's a strong title reign, and he's giving himself some credibility. You need a way to, again, put the icing on the cake for Bron Breakker's title reign, to give him the match at Mania, which helps elevate him to then fighting Roman Reigns at the next main roster pay-per-view, and again, make it justifiable but fast. So, let's switch over to the main roster for a bit. In line with Vengeance is Elimination Chamber. And what's happening at Elimination Chamber? We have Reigns versus Goldberg. Now, we know what this is going to be. Paul Heyman's classic finisher, use all of your finishers in 5 minutes match, and Reigns wins, lol. So, they hit each other with about 10 spears each. Goldberg hits a jackhammer if he's still got it in him. Reigns kicks out. Reigns puts a guillotine on Goldberg. Goldberg passes out. Reigns wins. Very simple. Now, in taking that into account, what would happen next, and there's a particular reason why I want Goldberg to pass out. Because he didn't tap out. And then that gives Goldberg a reason to say, I want another title shot. Now, here's the problem. To give Goldberg one more match, which is what I want to do, he needs to extend his contract a little bit. Either one more match, if we've only got 1 month until Mania, or 2 more just to get him through 2 months. Anyway, if we're doing Fastlane then Mania, I give Goldberg one more shot versus Reigns. Goldberg loses again. He's still pissed. He still wants another shot. So he goes for the NXT title at Mania, loses to Bron Breakker. That's the end of his contract. Or you say, Goldberg, okay, look, yeah, we get you want another shot, but listen, you waltz in here and ask for title shots all the time. Why don't you earn this one? And then to earn it, he goes to fight Breakker to try to win the NXT title, but he doesn't do that. Now, how we're going to book the feud is either in line with the Ziggler stuff or after the Ziggler stuff, depending on how long there is between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. We've got to do this, like I said, in line with the Ziggler feud or after the Ziggler feud, just depending on the timeline. But roughly it'll be the same thing. Goldberg respects Breakker. He knows Breakker because, you know, he knew Scotty and Rick, and he helped Breakker come through and learn his craft, and that is actually kind of true. They do have a bit of a history. I think Breakker's mentioned him in interviews before. So there's history to play off. Goldberg likes the guy. But Goldberg wants Reigns. Goldberg wants the Universal title, and the NXT title is a way to get there. Now, you use the NXT arenas where, you know, you've got a smaller crowd and you're not really piping in noise as much. Goldberg's probably going to be the biggest heel in the building because NXT is about the future, and you've got this old cripple coming down to try to, you know, this will obviously make Breakker massively more the babyface, and Goldberg doesn't even have to try to like play heel or anything. It's just, you know, very simple. Goldberg says, Breakker, I want your title, you're next. That summarizes it. And then, you know, Breakker, they go back and forth, yada, yada, yada. They can refer to their history a bit. You get to the match. Again, 10 minutes max. Because, you know, it's Goldberg. You can't really be doing long matches with him. Even 10 minutes is probably pushing it a fair bit. let Breaker hit him with let Breaker use a spear against him, because like we all know Goldberg's got a wicked spear, but Breaker does too. If you see him and Ciampa tag match against Legado de Fantasma, gee, Breaker hit a wicked spear. And he can make that like a sort of occasional signature that leads up to his military press thing. I think that would be really good. And he hits it better than just about anyone at the moment. So why not let that kind of match be a passing of the torch of the spear, in a way, from Goldberg to Breaker. And then you know what I mean? Obviously Reigns is using it, but come on, like as a signature, I think that many people use it. Why not let Breaker? So they have their match. Breaker wins. He's the NXT champ. You get to the next episode of NXT. He wants a shot. He's going to relinquish the title for a shot against Roman Reigns. So then you're going into the next pay-per-view, judging by WWE's pay-per-view names from last year and how much they like to have cringy marketing. WrestleMania Backlash, edition number 2. We have Reigns versus Breaker. How would I book the Reigns versus Breaker feud? This is going to be interesting. Bron Breakker's a rising star. He came up through NXT quick. He won the title of Ciampa. He beat Legado. He beat Ziggler. He beat Goldberg. He's gone through NXT quick. He's beat some top guys. He is not scared. He's tough as nails. He's come right in and he wants to run through Reigns. No BS. No messing around. He's here. Roman Reigns is kind of... You're the young former champ. You're the young rising star. He's not really sweating Breaker very much. You know what I mean? Because, you know, not relatively the most experienced. So we can have them back and forth on the mic. Paul Heyman can praise him because he's been putting Breaker over in real life, I think. But, you know, give props to Reigns as the guy to win, because Paul Heyman is the best at putting somebody over but saying his client is better. That's literally, it's a fantastic skill that Heyman has. Now, you could do standard feud. They have one either in the first or second match, depending on if you want to use the Usos to drag the thing on because of interference. Breaker beats Reigns. Pretty simple. Now, that would be the most logical way to have the feud and the most realistic way to do it. But I'm going to be a bit of have some fun with fantasy booking and stretch the lines of reality and stretch past some WWE and other people, former employees, beef with WWE to have a bit of fun. Let's have a contract signing segment between Breaker and Reigns, because it's WWE's favourite thing to do. You flip the table, you fight, you do all the usual shtick. Reigns and the Usos get the upper hand on Breaker. They beat Breaker down. And Breaker's hurt. He looks hurt anyway. So then, you have Medical bring out a stretcher. You have him stretch it up the entrance ramp. And you hear an ambulance siren. And you know where I'm going with this. You think it's for Breaker to be carted out to the local medical facility, as WWE wants to call it. But no. Or even better, you could actually have the ambulance show up, Breaker get loaded into the back of the ambulance, grab a microphone, and say his uncle's catchphrase, "Holla, if you hear me." And Scott Steiner returns, helps him fend off the Usos. Breaker goes after Reigns. And then to the match card of the pay-per-view, you could add the Steiner brothers, Scott and Rick, versus the Usos for the tag titles. Again, it's just something to add to the tag division, because the tag division has nothing in WWE, because Vince does not give two shits about the tag division. Obviously, the Usos would win that. There's no point for those brothers to win. And like I said, it's not the realistic feud, because I don't think Scott Steiner is returning to WWE anytime soon. I think they hate each other, but as a guy, and I like to dream a bit, that would be kind of cool, and I think everybody would agree. But the crux is you have the Breaker-Reigns feud. Breaker beats Reigns either at WrestleMania Backlash or at the following pay-per-view because the Usos screwed him over the first time. But, yeah, very simply, you've Brock Lesnar, Bron Breakker from the start of 2022 from the start of 2022, you have him run through NXT, run through some guys on the main roster using NXT as the way to do that. Then you just have him run straight through Reigns. You know, in less than half a year, you've turned Breakker into the biggest babyface in WWE. Are fans gonna... I don't know how fans are gonna feel about that. It could be a bit of a tough one to swallow, but there are people who wouldn't mind seeing Reigns' title run end. And, well, WWE basically did that with Brock Lesnar, pushed him in half a year, not even. And, well, with the right, because they did it in the right way, in less than half a year from debuting, he beat The Rock, and everybody bought into it, and it was a big part of the fact that he's become such a big star through pro wrestling in multiple countries as well as mixed martial arts. You know, it happened with Lesnar. Why can't it happen with Breakker? And the guy, like I said, he comes across as legit. I think he could pull it off. And if that period between him from NXT to winning the belt isn't enough to get him over in that role, then I think he will get over through the actual title run itself. Like, he could beat Reigns again if he has to. He could then, you know what I mean, take on a few top level challenges. You could introduce a Drew McIntyre into the mix. You could, like, you know, say, you know, look kid, I rate what you've done. You've done really well, but I took 17 long years to get to that position. You had to grind and grind and grind, man. You've got a lot more to do before you just waltz into the top. Like, just have that be the premise. Or people looking at him as a champion like they do now in NXT, the way Santos Escobar does, you know, young champion, you've got a lot to learn. That basic premise, and he runs through a few people. Has some good, you know, top level matches in there. He could fight McIntyre, he could put Rollins in front of him, put Owens in front of him, put AJ Styles in front of him. You could put, I don't know, you could put just about anyone in front of him. I think he'd do well. And, you know, you put him over as a credible champ, even though he's been in WWE and even NXT before that in a very short time. You could Brock Lesnar him to the top, and I reckon he could probably still credibly go and win the Universal title before Veer makes his way to Raw. He's taken that long to do it. But no, I think all in all, that's a pretty good way to dethrone Roman Reigns. I think that you make a new star out of Bron Breakker through him dethroning Reigns, and how you handle his title reign if you do it in the right way. I think that, you know, Roman Reigns has had a long run. It's a run that I think could be his legacy, could cement him. And I think the next logical thing to do would be maybe have him off TV for a month or two. He comes back to fight Bron Breakker one more time in a few months, and he can build to a sort of just a feud with The Rock. That gives him something to do for half a year before you have to, you know, give him another, like, main roster title run or something, a character change, you know, whatever, to keep him up the top if you want to do that. I think there are things that Reigns can do without the title, at least for a little while. I think that you make a new star in doing that. And I think that you can put Breakker against a lot of people, and under the premise of he's got to pay his dues and prove himself as a champion, instead of doing it in like 5 months from being called up to NXT to becoming the WWE champion. Oh yeah, no problem. You know, people don't rate him, and he's got to earn his respect still, I suppose. That's a way you can carry that on for about 5 or 6 months, and I think that'll get over. And then, you know, you can just put him into more regular stories, but he's over as the main babyface. I think that could work. And yeah, you've done it, and then eventually, you know, you just make him one of the top main roster guys. I don't think it's too hard a thing to do. I think that's pretty fair enough. New top babyface. Reigns' big, you know, title run culminates in putting a new star over. And he's got things you can do with The Rock and whatnot. And we've made NXT as a development brand a lot better in terms of justifying why main roster guys come down, in adding incentive to the NXT title, and making call-ups make more sense, if you want to look at it that way, and how talent is going to be developed and transition to the top. Make that make sense. That works. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you soon with another video, and enjoy and peace out or whatever. This is very impromptu, so I don't know, I hope it worked.